Is there anyone opposed to that? Right, there is. Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, I think my colleague summarised our position on this bill relatively well. I think given decent time, decent briefing, proper process, then we would have been supportive of the legislation. I think what's his name, the one who just spoke? Wairarapa. Even the member for Wairarapa, Mr Hayes, summarised the situation pretty well. There was an earthquake, and we all know that there could not be a census in Christchurch this year. You know, I think munted is the description of the centre of Christchurch, and the office was stuffed, and you couldn't hold a census for part of the country, and therefore it had to be deferred. And I would have thought that the member, if he was a good active minister, wouldn't have gone past the first week in March when he had advice to that effect, and the decision to do it, we're told, was made in May. That was the decision and I think the announcements were made around that time.
The census was actually being held in March. We cancelled it.
All right, okay, we'll cancel it, but the decision to take this process was made in May, I understand. And the question I have for the Minister is a relatively simple one, because this bill is not a complex one. I think it's fair to say that when we get to the committee stages, there'll be some holding of the Minister account for what might be described as sloppy drafting, but we will work our way through that, and that's one of the reasons, of course, bills should go to select committee. But if it had gone to a select committee, and the Minister is aware that I offered a process whereby it went for the period of the recess and went through its stages, without much debate at all, and quicker than we're going to do it today and tomorrow, then there was an offer there to do that, because it meant that we could have had the statistician could have had the parliamentary council. Sorry? Sorry, I can't hear the member.
I think you're playing games.
No, not at all. Not at all. I've been around this place for a while, and I have respect for the institution, and there has to be a very good reason for a bill not to go to a select committee. And the fact that the member was late getting himself organised in this way is not a good enough excuse. Well, I tell you what, the member is now pleading lack of influence. The member is now pleading the fact that the Minister of Finance won't listen to him. And frankly... Well, I want to be a little bit fair to that Minister. If I was putting together a National Party cabinet, I'd stick him in it.
I would too.
Because he's had experience and he knows practical stuff, and if he was in there, he would have been able to sort out the Minister of Finance, and it would have been able to proceed. Mr Speaker, it could have gone off to a select committee for 2 weeks. It could have had 2 or 3 hours of hearings. People could have been satisfied. The drafting could have been made slightly more fashionable than it is, and we could have heard from the people who are interested in it, and that wouldn't have been hard. Now, I want to say that, and as I say, we would have taken less time than pushing it through this way under urgency. And in fact, we probably could have had one speech on either side on the first reading. It could have been off. It could have been off to a select committee by now if the Minister had decided to take that approach. I had one specific question which the Minister has answered privately that I'd like to get onto the record as part of the exercise, and that is to seek an assurance that Section 77 of the Electoral Act is not offended by this bill. There is a requirement in there for 5 yearly censuses. And it is censuses. I've looked it up. It's Latin. It's Latin, not Greek. And it's assessment. And it used to start off. The first things it used to be was a traffic count. They used to count the traffic. That was the first census, and then it was later used for taxation in Roman times. But no, as a member, I can't remember. I had to do some research in the Collins Dictionary in order to find that out. The other question, which I think is an important one, and I'm obliged to my colleague Charles Savelle for highlighting the issue to me, is the question of why when we have a statutes amendment bill that's been through a select committee, and I think we also have a legislation bill somewhere in the process, why we are amending... Both of them back from the committee, waiting for second readings. Why we are taking a process to put through under urgency the Statutes Drafting and Compilation Act. And I want to seek an assurance from the Minister that this is not a piece of legislation in order to make arrangements for a particular individual. Mr. Speaker, I think it is very important that the House gets an assurance that this is a general piece of legislation, and that we are not faced with the immediate situation of someone who wants to do another job for a period of time and come back. Because, Mr. Speaker, if that is the case, that would be an outrageous abuse of Parliament, because in the briefings that we were given, there was no such reference. There was no such reference at all. We've had chief executives on periods in the past, go and do jobs overseas, sometimes relatively very important jobs, and come back, not necessarily to the same job. They took their chances when they did return to the country. But I think it is important, Mr. Speaker, to get that assurance, and I think the time taken on the legislation will depend on the Minister being able to give that assurance during the select committee process.
Under a polygraph test?
No, that's what I'm. No, frankly, if that minister gave his word, then I would take it. Of course, inside this House we're obliged to. Behind the chair, there'd be one or two of his colleagues who I wouldn't be quite as trusting of, including the Minister who has responsibility for the Parliamentary Council. But within this House, never me either. I think there's never a danger for me being Attorney General. I think there's a certain amount of shuddering to my right at the very prospect, Mr. Speaker. I do want to, though, also compliment my colleague who's leading the Labour Party debate on this bill for his work both on this legislation and also generally as the opposition spokesperson on statistics. I think it's fair to say that it's not normally a position which has a lot of profile, but the member's made a lot of it. He's looked at a lot of the statements that have come out. He has inquired into the positions, the workings of the Department of Statistics, and I think he has developed a level of understanding of statistics, the way it works, and the importance of the statistician. I think the last person who had that level of understanding, I don't want to be too rude to Darren Hughes, is Michael Cullen, who was, as well as being the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Treasurer, was also, at least early in his career, the Minister of Statistics, because he thought it was an important role and one which he wanted to guard the independence of. Sorry? I was Clayton the Minister as well. I'm going to plead guilty. I'm going to plead guilty to to my friend and colleague Chris Hipkins of that one passing me by. It didn't quite.
Where's Minister Statistics?
Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, I don't care about that member. He's not going to be voting for the next cabinet in November. So I don't really care, Mr. Speaker. But I'm very sorry to Clayton. Mr. Speaker, the point that I do want to make is that Dr. Cullen regarded the independence of the government statistician as being vitally important. Frankly, on occasions, we used to get quite grumpy with him. There were some arrangements which we thought could have been much better from a taxpayer's point of view. We think we could have got better quality information, but over a period of time we had some statisticians, Mr. Speaker, who just wouldn't be told.
Nikki Kay.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to speak on this piece of legislation. This bill is supposed to be a non-controversial piece of legislation. However,